A very good morning to everyone. I welcome you all for the free training of OpUtils. So here for the today's free training on ITOM module OpUtils, we'll be discussing about how to safeguard your network and manage your network environment using OpUtils. So before we get started with our training session, let me just quickly confirm whether everyone is able to hear me and able to see the presentation on the screen. You can give your confirmation by commenting on the chat panel available on your screen. Once we get few confirmations, we shall be able to proceed further with our training session today. I'm awaiting for your confirmation. Kindly give a confirmation by typing S on the chat panel so that once we get few confirmations, we can proceed with our training session. So let's proceed with our training session. I'll quickly introduce myself. My name is Shrikant and I'm one of the product expert from ITOM. I have been handling support, product implementation and training for Op Manager. Uh, Excuse me. So let me introduce myself. My name is Shrikant and I'm one of the product experts from Op Manager, and OpUtils. I have been handling the product implementation, technical support, as well as the training for these two products. So in case if you have missed any part of the webinar session, or if you want to review the session, we'll be uploading this webinar at the end of this session today. And in case during the session, if you have any questions, we do have set of product experts joined as panelists for this webinar session. You can raise your questions and they'll be able to answer your questions. Out of which we'll be discussing few interesting ones here right away after the webinar training is done. So today for the today's OpUtils webinar, the training agenda we'll be introducing the OpUtils to you, the basic functionalities available under OpUtils, and we'll be discussing each and every module one by one. The first one will be discussed is IP address management, which is also known as IPAM, followed by the switch port mapper, which is also known as SPM, and then we'll be discussing about the rogue detection, and this all will be followed by the utilities tools available in OpUtils, that is bandwidth monitoring tool, config file manager, as well as the network monitor. And in the end, we'll be discussing few troubleshooting tools in the OpUtils, which you can use it for day-to-day troubleshooting in your network. So what are the actual challenges faced by a network engineer while maintaining a network in his environment? There are chances of losing the track of IP addresses or the switch ports. There can be rogue intrusion and network data breach which a network engineer might not be aware of. Due to multiple subnets and IP addresses, the network can become a little messy and confusing. Unable to keep up with the organization growth, and when an organization grows, there are chances of adding more devices, and the network engineer won't be able to keep the track of IP addresses assigned to those devices. And similar to the network changes that happens in the subnet within the network. So these are the basic and common challenges faced by a network engineer. And in this training session, we'll be discussing how OpUtils makes life easier for a network engineer. So let's get started. So this is introduction to the OpUtils. OpUtils is a network management and protection tool which allows you to monitor the status of the IP addresses, the switch ports, and it also allows you to detecting the rogue devices by blocking the network breach within your environment. And it also has the utility tools which allows you to monitor the bandwidth usage, the configuration backup for the Cisco devices. So OpUtils mainly comprises of two major modules, which is known as IPAM and SPM. IPAM is mainly used for monitoring the IP addresses, and switchport SPM is meant for monitoring the switchport mapper. And one of the interesting feature will be rogue detection, which we'll be discussing in later slides today. So usually we have seen in a common research that most of the organization had been using XLS, that is spreadsheet files, to monitor their usage of IP addresses and for other functionalities. So what are the drawbacks of using a spreadsheet in such scenarios? It is actually quite time consuming. It can also lead to prone human error because a human won't be able to map all the IP addresses and keep an eye out and track on all the IP addresses available in their environment. And the user won't be able to keep up to the dates records and there are also risk of losing the control of IPs and switch ports. So these are the common drawbacks of using the spreadsheets. So how OpUtils will make it easier, we'll see in the later slides. So these are the tools that are available under the OpUtils. IP address manager for monitoring the IP address, switchport mapper for monitoring the status of the switch ports, rogue detection to check the rogue devices and monitor, block and prevent the network intrusion, bandwidth monitoring for monitoring the bandwidth of interfaces, config file manager which allows you to upload or download or compare the configurations of switches. We'll now look forward for the prerequisites for the installing OpUtils. OpUtils require a server physical or it could be a virtual server with 8 gigs of RAM, a quad-core processor or higher, a disk space of 40 GB. The database can be either MS SQL or the product bundle PGSQL. And we do have two installations, that is Windows OS and Linux OS. Each of them have 32-bit and 64-bit. In case if you would like to view the further detailed system requirement, you can visit the link mentioned below. So this is a pictorial representation of how to add subnets or switch ports to the OpUtils. You can go to the IP address manager, subnet list, then add it to the subnets and IPAM, or directly you can add to switchport mapper switch list. In case if the IP address switch repeats in IP address manager, it will also get added in the IPAM. So before we get started, let me just quickly give you, we'll be using this is the OpUtil standalone version, and the build number that we will be using here is 12.3.321. So here we have our first part of OpUtils, that is IP address management. So IP address management or IPAM, which is one of the module in OpUtils, allows a user to have a brief clarification on the status of the IP address within his environment. So there can be situations where your user might lose the track of IP address, whether it's particularly reserved or not reserved, whether it's placed under available category or used, or it's under transient state, or maybe you would like to have a hierarchical tree view, or maybe the tracks related to the IP address, which all are the connected MAC address to these IP, and what is the DNS name of this IP. So these are the basic functionalities which an IPAM can perform for a network engineer to simplify his job. So how to add a particular subnet into IPAM? There are two methods, which is manual addition and another one is bulk addition. Under the manual addition, we have IPv4 address where you can provide the group name, subnet mask or the subnet name, or you can add the switch, or else you can add your DHCP, which using the SNMP protocol, which also fetches the scopes, that is available subnets. And the bulk addition method will allow you to add the subnets using the CSV file format import. Let me quickly take you to the IPAM in the UI and explain you in much brief. So in order to go to the IPAM, you need to click on IP address manager, click on subnets. On the left, you'll have the tree view. In case if you would like to add one more, you can click on add here. and this will be the gateway for adding the subnets into the OpUtils. You can directly add manually or you can import from CSV. And in case if you want to create new groups and add those subnets into that group, you can choose the group name if they are available here. And in case if you want to add a new group name, you can click on add and save it. Providing a subnet address in this column and provide name or the VLAN name for further clarification and the location for the details. This will allow the operators to fetch the IP addresses available in under that particular subnet. So performing this will add the subnets here. And in case if you want to remove a particular subnet, you can select and delete it from here. Or if you want to change few configurations, you can edit from here. Once the subnet is added, it will try to perform a manual scan. And once the scan is complete, it will fetch the IP addresses available. So this IP addresses will be placed here, and on every scan, the status of each IP address will get updated. So for further more detailed scanning of these subnets, like for example, to retrieve the MAC address, the IP to DNS, the DNS name, it is better to add the DHCP as well as the DNS server. So for adding the DHCP, you need to go to the IPAM address, IP address manager, DHCP, click on add, provide your DHCP server name, choose the domain, and it will add the DHCP. Performing this action will also fetch the IP addresses and the subnets by fetching the scopes, which can be toggled here and can be confirmed, and the IP addresses under that particular DHCP. So in order to add the DNS name, you need to go to the settings, OpUtils, IP address manager. Under the general, you need to provide the DNS server name, and you can also add multiple DNS server name provided separated by comma. Once you have added the DNS server, the IP addresses shall be able to retrieve the DNS status and the IP to DNS mapping and the MAC address. And in case if MAC address is unavailable, you can directly add the seed router in under the routers. You can add the router here, settings, OpUtils, routers. This will allow the OpUtils to fetch the MAC to IP mapping from the ARC table available in that particular router. So going back to the IP addresses, you can view going back to the subnet, you can choose any subnet which will open a subnet summary page, and this will be your subnet summary page. On the subnet summary page, you will be able to see the status of all the IPs available in that particular subnet, which are all under the used state, transient state, and available state. So whenever a subnet is added, all the IPs will be under used or the transient state, because there is not a necessary situation where an IP can be always available. There can be some scenarios where operators might not be able to reach that IP, or maybe it's administratively down or operatively down. In such scenarios, we wait for certain scan times, and based on the scan result, the IP will be moved from transient state to the available IP state. So under the subnet summary page, you'll have a toggle to switch to the tabs, which is known as IPs, where you'll be able to see the active status of the IPs and the alarms if any alarm has been raised for this particular IP. And under the history, if any IP change, IP to MAC change has happened, the historical data of change that has happened will be listed here. So this will allow the user to keep a track on. the IPs that has been changed to from one device to another device. So if you would like to visit any one particular IP address, you can go back to any subnet, IPs. Clicking on that particular IP will take you to the page where you have the details of the IP address. Let me show you a device with much more clarity. You can switch to the IPs. For example, take this particular IP address. So these are the basic overview of the IP address. The IP and its connected MAC, its corresponding DNS name, IP to forward lookup and reverse lookup. And in case if you want to change the state of a particular IP, you can go to the IP address, select any one particular IP, click on more icon on here, and you can choose the reserved status, where if you want to reserve this IP for particular groups, or if you want to reserve this particular IP for this only device. And if you want to move it to reserved from non-reserved, you can also update from here. Similarly, you can check the availability and change the status of the device, whether if it's actually used, you can manually change it to use state or transient state or the available state. And then when it comes to the authenticity, which allows an IP to be trusted or rogue or a guest state, which we'll be discussing later in the rogue detection module. So let's have a quick recap. Using the IP address manager, we were able to view the real-time visibility and the control of the IP address. We were able to keep the track of IP addresses when under what particular state they were, either they were available, used, or reserved. We were able to track the IP address details. We were able to see the hierarchical tree view. Then we were able to view the status of IP address at glance under the IP summary page. And then we were Active Directory integration with multi-domain controller support. And we have also confirmed that we were able to import the subnet details using the CSV files. So these are the real-time scenarios where OpUtils helps you to make your job easy for a network engineer. So there can be scenarios where one particular IP has been assigned to two different devices, which is actually a spoofing, that is art spoofing, and OpUtils will allow you to indicate an alarm when this particular IP is being used by some other device by using the MAC details. And it also allows the manual work reduction for the network engineer, which instead of looking out the spreadsheet and manually mapping the IP address, a user can have a glance look at the subnet and the IP is available in OpUtils and will be able to map it to their respective devices and their alter the states based on its requirement. So with this, we have finished the IPAM module. Now we'll be looking forward for the switch port management, which is a switch port mapper tool available in OpUtils. It's similar to the IPAM, where you'll be scanning the switches and you will be able to monitor the status of the ports instead of the IP addresses. So the discovery method is quite similar to the IPAM. You can either perform a manual addition or a bulk addition. Manual addition comes with group name or the switch name, individual switch using the IP address, or else you can do a bulk addition of the devices using the CSV file import. And then we'll look forward for the discovery, which using an IP subnet range, and OpUtils will be able to fetch the switches available in that particular subnet. And the credentials used by the switchport mapper is SNMP, and OpUtils does support all the three versions of SNMP. So under the switchport mapper, a user can easily identify which switch ports it's connected to a device and shows the MAC to IPs of the device attached to the physical port of the switches. A user can gain the visibility to view the IP MAC VLAN status and also the availability of the ports. A user can also view the operational status and speed of each port. And we can also track the changes of audits. And automatically it will collect the MAC IP DNS details, so it has less manual work. And we do have a global search, so you can directly move to the switches where you actually want, and you can view the direct switch details instead of moving around. So let me just quickly take you to the switchport mapper and give you a brief description here. So you can click on switchport mapper switches to enter the switchport mapper. You can add a particular switch by clicking one minute. You can click and go to the switches, click on add switch here. It will fetch a page where you can add the switch. There are three file imports, that is manual. You can use the group listed here, or if you want to create a new group for hierarchy tree view, you can add a new group name. You can provide the switch name and check right away that the switch is responding for the SNMP query from here. And you can choose the credentials. In case if your credentials is not listed, you can click on add credential to add the credentials. This is the bulk import, that is I import from CSV file. You can download the sample file that is available here and configure your CSV with the details of switches available in your subnet and import it using the CSV file import into the switchport mapper. And then the last is we have discover, where you can provide the subnet and discover bulk devices available within your one particular subnet in your environment. So once a switch is added, you can click on this particular switch and perform a manual scan from here. And in case if you want to edit the details of this switch, you can click on edit and change the details. And in case if you want to delete this particular switch or the ports, you can delete from here. Once the switch is added and it has been scanned, the port details will be available. So port details will have these all information, that is the switch name, the if index and if name of the interface, the port number, and the state of the port, whether it's available or it's under the transient state or it's under used. So in case if you add a particular active directory, it will fetch the trusted devices automatically here. And once you have added the seed router, it will allow you to fetch the MAC addresses, and DNS server will fetch the DNS name of the IP. So in case if you want to view the ports, you can click on the port. It will take you to the port summary page. This will be the port summary page. Will have the information about the ports, connected MAC, and for the alarms related to the ports, like any port change has happened or any new device has been detected, and the history of change of ports, like any new IP has been changed to multiple ports, and those historical data will be represented here. And if you go back to the switches, for example, let's take this one particular switch. Here we have the switch summary page where you have this port view where you can see the port, and by moving your cursor around, and it will give you the MAC address, the status, if name, if index of the interface connected to this port. And under the port view, we do have quite a more information where you can use the filters, and these gray colored definitions is this is because of a stacked port. You can click on more to view the stacks available on that particular port. And you can also filter it using the use transient available. And you can use actions to manually configure these ports, either if you want to disable the interface or enable them or modify if alias name, or if you want to exclude the port for the scans or include this port for the scans. And alarms related to this particular switch will be listed here for all the ports available under this particular switch, and the historical change will be placed here if any IP address port change has happened. So this will be your hierarchical tree view. You can add more groups while adding the switch. So the real-time scenario for a network engineer. There might be a scenario where a switch might be one particular port being used by one device, and later it turns out to be a new device connection, and a user won't be able to have a track of it. At that time, the historical data which represent when this port changes happen from which device to which device, those historical data will allow a network engineer to keep track of all the port change that has happened. And instead of performing all these steps manually, switch port mapper, which is a feature of OpUtils, allows you to do all these tasks automatically and at ease. So next we have one of the interesting feature from OpUtils, that is rogue device detection. So rogue device detection, where there can be scenarios where devices which are not authorized in your network might be present, and a user won't be able to keep a track while following a spreadsheet or with manual efforts. So what rogue detection will do is it will try to scan your subnet and will help you to identify the rogue devices and keep your network more safer than it was ever. So a network engineer will be able to verify personally all the IP address at glance and can mark the status whether it's a trusted device or it's a rogue device or it's a guest device without even breaking a sweat. So rogue detection feature will allow you to receive email alerts when a status of the device changes, or where you can able to mark a particular IPs for trusted, guest, and rogue. And guest validity is also available, where you can give only give validity for certain period where this device will be trusted in your network, and once the validity gets over, it will automatically be able to notify you so that you can decide what exactly you need to do with that IP address further. So let me quickly take you back to the UI, and I'll be able to show you how rogue detection works. So this is the rogue detection. You can click on rogue detection. It will take you to a page where you have all the IP addresses. Before that, we go to the settings, OpUtils, Active Directory. If you place your Active Directory here, it will try to fetch all the trusted device in your network. And just in case if you have missed any part of the IP addresses that are trusted in your domain, you can directly import them using the CSV file import. And for CSV file import, you need to type go to the rogue detection and click on this add icon on your right side, which will help you to browse the files and you can choose the files. This will directly add the devices under trusted. And in case if you have added the devices from IP address manager using the IP addresses, all of them will be listed under the discover. And rest of the, like for example, if you have added the IP addresses for rogue detection using the Active Directory or the CSV file import, it will be placed under trusted, where you can easily rectify which are the devices which are not trusted and what are the devices that are recently discovered. And whenever a new device is added into the network, you'll be able to view it here. For example, if you have this particular IP address, so these are the trusted IPs which I have fetched using the Active Directory over there. And you can choose any one particular IP address or MAC, click on more icon, and you'll have an option of manually configuring the status of this particular IP. Either you can choose it to be trusted, or if you want it, you can map it as guest, or if you want it to as known as to be rogue, you can block. There is also an option of blocking that particular port, for which we require this SNMP credentials of the switch. Let me quickly uh, click on guest. We can provide a validity by giving a deadline and description for your information. And once the guest validation is done, you'll be receiving an email if you have toggled an email notification. And you can decide further what exactly needs to be done with that guest user. So you can, as I have mentioned, that IP addresses can also be discovered using CSV file import apart from the Active Directories. You can also select all the devices at once and mark it as trusted, or perform all the actions that are available for one individual IP. So how exactly this rogue detection helps you out? There can be scenarios where two devices can be mapped to one IP addresses, which is known as ARP spoofing, and you'll be able to get notified when OpUtils tries to scan for rogue, and OpUtils will identify the ARP spoofing has done, that is IP duplication, and you'll be receiving an email accordingly. This also helps the manual work reduction because checking the rogue devices using the spreadsheet will take quite a lot of time, which operators will do it a manual automatic scan and will notify you without any problem. So with this, we'll move on to the other utilities tools available in OpUtils, which is Bandwidth Monitor and Config File Manager. So bandwidth monitoring tool, which allows you to fetch the interfaces bandwidth details using the SNMP protocol, and you can configure the thresholds and monitor the bandwidth utilization of that particular interface. And it also displays the comparison of individual traffic of its interface. And on the other hand, we have configuration file manager, which allows you to start up a running configuration backups of Cisco devices. You can also compare these two backups or load new backup that you or update any configuration backup to an existing switch. This point has to be noted where bandwidth monitor tool and configuration file manager is available only for the standalone OpUtils application, not with the add-on which comes with OpManager Plus. So let me quickly take you to the networking tools and explain you. So under the networking tools, we have this network monitor, which is also a utility tool which allows the operators to check the reachability, that is the availability of a device. For example, take this one particular server. It will try to perform continuous ping and will be able to return you an alarm when the device goes unavailable. Or maybe due to some network, if there is a delay of response for the ping, that is the ICMP protocol, then you shall be able to receive a notification. For that threshold, I'll be explaining you later in the slides. So for adding a device under the network monitor, you need to click on add. You can add manually by providing one's individual IP address or the host name, followed by its read community, or else you can use a CSV file import for the bulk addition of devices. On the next hand, we have the bandwidth monitor, which is used to monitor the bandwidth utilization of the interfaces. OpUtils uses SNMP protocol. You can use SNMP v1, v2, v3. And for adding the device, you need to click on add, provide a IP address or the host name, followed by the SNMP credentials, and it will fetch all the interface details based on the response for the SNMP queries. And once you have the device, you can click on that particular IP to view the interface. You can manipulate through the timeline and view the data. And in case of any alarm that has been raised based on the threshold that you have configured, you shall be able to view it here. And if you click on the device itself, you can go to the detailed traffic tab where you can switch between the report type, that is packet, speed, utilization, volume, and for the timeline that you want. And you can switch between the interfaces of that particular IP and see the detailed traffic and the other data available for that particular IP address and the interface. So moving back to the networking tools, the last one we have here is the config file manager. In order to add a new device to the config file manager, you need to click on the add icon on the right. You can either provide an individual IP address or the host name, followed by a description and the SNMP credentials. It should be read and write. Apart from that, you can do a bulk addition of the devices using the CSV file import. So once you have added the switch, you shall be able to view it here on the config file manager. This but three icons are available here. The first one is to view the startup config. The second icon will allow you to view the running config, and third one is to compare the two configs. This also allows you to compare the configs backup between two individual devices. And in case if you would like to upload a configuration backup, you can click on select the particular switch, or you can also do multiple upload for by selecting all the switches. Click on this upload icon and you can upload the particular startup or running config file to a switch. And the second icon we have is the historical data, which will fetch the active backups that has been taken. Click on the switching name, it will fetch the historical data. And in case if you want to perform an upload of the old data, you can use it from upload it from here. And in case if you want to compare, you can use the compare icon available here. So these are the modules that were available in OpUtils. Apart from that, we do have more than 25 plus essential tools available in OpUtils, which can help you in troubleshooting the network issues within your environment. So let me quickly take you to there and we'll be able to explain you. You can tool sets. And before we go to the tools, I would like to explain further more on the OpUtils with the schedulers, which we'll be discussing later. And with this, we'll move on with the tool sets. Under the tool, we have the system details update tool. That is one of the useful feature from a network engineer perspective, where you can update a particular details which can be fetched using the SNMP. For example, take this particular switch. There is an option of updating the sysname, syslocation, or the syscontact using the SNMP credentials. And whatever the configuration you make, it will get updated on the particular switch. And another tool we have is ping tool, manually check the availability of the device. SNMP ping to check the SNMP response from the device using the OpUtil server. And proxy ping will allow you to check the availability of the proxy router of the device. And there's also a tool for trace route. WMI queries tool is available to check the WMI response, CLI for the CLI response. And we do have the address monitoring tool, which allows you to resolve the MAC addresses, IP to MAC or MAC to IP, DNS resolver, which will try to perform a forward and reverse NS lookup and fetch the DNS name available for that IP. DHCP scope monitor, which will fetch the scopes available in a particular DHCP server. So these are the tools that are available in OpUtils, which you can use in day-to-day life for more troubleshooting your network issues. MIB browser is available to check the MIB. You can upload a particular MIB and check the response of the switches or the IPs devices, and will confirm what are the responses that we receive for a particular OID. So next with this, we'll move on with our schedule, configure, and report. So all the actions in OpUtils can be performed automatically if you have planned it well and schedule it accordingly. So for the rogue devices, OpUtils will automatically perform the scan. You don't have to perform a manual scan. In case if you want a manual scan, it can also be done. And for periodic scan, it's completely based on a user configuration. Either if you want a daily scan or a couple of times in a particular day, or a monthly scan or an yearly scan. So for scheduling a particular task, you need to go to the settings, OpUtils. At the bottom, we do have scheduler. For each module will have its own schedule scan. For the IP address manager, you can add a task here and choose the available subnets that you have added and configure the schedule as per your convenience and when the scan has to be done. And automatically OpUtils will try to scan those IP addresses and update the status of those IPs. Similar is this case with the switch port mapper, where you can add the task and let OpUtils to perform an automatic scan, and then it will update the status of the port. And this will also allow OpUtils to update the historical change if any has happened. And for config file manager, you can enable an automatic scheduler with a configuration of your timeline. And for DHCP, you can, for the DHCP also, for all the modules, you can perform a global scheduler from here. And manual can be done under the each inventory page. And in case if you want to do it from IP address manager, you can click on the IP address manager and schedule is available here. Similar with the the scenario with switch port mapper, rogue detection, config file manager, all the modules available under the scheduler. You can, if you want to do it manually, you can switch to the each topic and you do have a scheduler option there. Configuring alerts. So whenever an alarm is raised, it's not necessary for a network engineer to sit in front of the application and monitor the status. In case if any alarm has been raised, if you want to get notified using the email or SMS, OpUtils does offer an option for that. For that, you need to go to the settings, basic settings, email notification. All the modules will have their own set of predefined notification, which you can email for based on the type of notification that you would like to, either via syslog or the email. So for the IP address manager, these are the few set of instructions, that is reverse lookup failed in case a forward lookup failed or any change has happened between the IP and the MAC. This can be toggled from here. And once you have saved the configuration, this shall be able to send out emails once an alarm is raised. Similarly, we have the same scenario with rogue detection. If you click on rogue detection, we do have three scenarios where a new system, in case a new system is detected, it will be placed under discovered, and OpUtils will be able to send out an email that new system has been detected. Similarly, when a guest validity expires, for example, you have provided a validity for a particular guest user and the timeline gets over, and you will get an email so that you can decide what needs to be done further with this IP. And whenever multiple IPs are traced out for same IP address is traced out for multiple devices, which is known as ARP spoofing. And if that has been detected by the operators during the scan, it will send out an email so that you'll get notified as early as possible. And you can take necessary actions to prevent your environment from intrusions. So in case if you want to view the alarm has been raised for any network changes that has been done, you can click on alarms and you can view the alarms here. IPAM alarms will be here, and the SPM you need to switch to the next tab. You can filter the alarm based on the switches. You can click on any can click on any alarm. If you don't want to view them, you can click simply delete in case if you want to remove them from your UI. So with this, we'll move on to our report generation. Report section we do have in OpUtils, and it does have few predefined reports that can help you out to take detailed statistics of your current networking environment. You can switch to the reports here available on the tab, and this is one of the good report that we can suggest you to view all the details available in OpUtils, that is the connected IP details, which will fetch the switch name, port, if index, if name, VLAN ID, connected IP to MAC, so that it will help a particular network engineer to keep track with and understand his network within his environment and proceed further with the action that needs to be taken for different scenarios. For example, if any rogue device has been detected or any IP change has happened, he can view this connected IP details, he can take necessary actions accordingly. And these reports can be exported using PDF or the CSV format. And under that, we have audit report to show what are the changes that has been performed by a specific user in the OpUtils. This can be filtered using the various options available, and all the reports do come with a scheduling option. So these are the report generations available in OpUtils, which will provide you a record of process, wide variety of reports, which will cover the all the details available in your OpUtils, that the all the IP address, subnets, switch port that you have added. So with the help of OpUtils, what are the necessary work that gets eased up? Like, you can make your work job easy for a network engineer. It will replace your spreadsheet records. It will centralize the management custom columns. You can globally search instead of unavailable spreadsheets, going through a spreadsheet and manually checking for the devices. You can perform a global search of the IP that you need to check the status, block or the unblock rogues, email alerts for any alarm or any alarm based on port change or any rogue device detected, and you can generate a detailed report without any manual efforts. So in case if you have furthermore interest on knowing more about the OpUtils, you can check our website, brochure, data sheets, and you can contact our support anytime, oputils-support@manageengine.com, and the help document is available to know more details and the features or steps available in OpUtils. And for the online demo website, we have this demo.oputils.com and the KB knowledge base where you can check the technical stuff related to the OpUtils. And there's a forums that is a technical community where you can raise your questions and our product experts will be able to answer your questions. So with this, we'll wind up with the training session. And now, since we have seen many of our attendees asking the questions, we have our set of panelists who had been answering the questions and are raised by our attendees. So out of which we'll be discussing few of them here. So I have one of my panelists, product expert, Mr. Anil. He'll be able to take care from this for this questionnaire session.
Thank you, Srikanth. Hello, everyone. My name is Anil Kumar. I'm one of the panelists and product expert from OpUtils. And today we have seen few interesting questions that were posted during the webinar session. And I will be here discussing few of them. So let's get started with the first one. And the first one goes like this. My switch is not listed in the supported list. OpUtils, can I still map it with OpUtils? And yes, OpUtils uses SNMP to fetch the port information from the switches. So if the device has SNMP configured, and if your switch that you want to monitor or manage with OpUtils supports bridge map, which is what we use to query the SNMP. You can use OpUtils to map that particular switch or map its ports to OpUtils. And the next one, switch port mapper do not show all the ports of the switch. And the one possible reason for which we don't show all the ports of that switch is because when we query the device, when we query the bridge map, OIDs that we use to fetch the port information, and we see that the matching entry for that particular port is not found in the bridge map. So that is the reason you might sometimes see only few ports listed instead of showing all the ports. And for which we do have an option to show all the interfaces, show all the ports. I mean, irrespective of the number of ports that are that we get response from the bridge MIP. And for that, you can go to settings and switch port mapper, and you have an option to show all interfaces. So if you select this particular option, you'll OpUtils will display all the ports of that particular switch. However, we will show the MAC address against that particular port, which we get response from the bridge MIP. And the next one, does IP address manager supports managing IPv6 address? Yes, the answer is yes. You can manage both IPv4 and IPv6 IP addresses using OpUtils. And the next one, and how is OpUtils licensed? OpUtils, the main features of OpUtils is IPAM, IP address management, and switch port management. And OpUtils is mainly licensed based on number of ports that you want to manage, as well as number of IP addresses that you want to manage using IPAM and SPM respectively. And another important licensing another important thing is we also charge for the number of users that you would like to have access to OpUtils product. So OpUtils is licensed based on number of users that you would like to provide access to OpUtils, and number of switch ports that you want to manage, and number of IP addresses that you want to manage using IPAM tool. And the rest other tools like config manager and network monitor, and these all comes free within the product. And the next one is, can any network devices and servers be monitored using bandwidth monitor? Yes, bandwidth monitor, we use SNMP. Bandwidth monitor can monitor the traffic status of any interfaces of any device that supports SNMP. So we primarily rely on SNMP response from the device to fetch the interface information. And if the device supports SNMP, you can use bandwidth monitor to monitor the network device or any server traffic or interface traffic or interface status. And if you want to monitor the availability of the device, you can use ICMP using network monitor option to monitor the availability of these devices. And the next one, is when I add a subnet to IPAM for the first time, it does not show any IP address available, though I have free IP addresses available in my subnet. As Srikanth would have explained while discussing about IPAM, when you add or scan any subnet for the first time, all of the responding IPs are shown as used, and non-responding IPs are placed in transient state. So this is because not all the non-responding IPs are available. So some might be down or due to a network issue. Some particular IPs might not be available, or since the port would have been shut down, right? So that is the reason we will first place those IPs after the first scan, place those IPs in transient state. And if the IP is continuously not responding, right, for the next 10 days, we'll make the particular IP as available. All right. The next question, can I use config file manager to back up HP and Juniper switches? And unfortunately, we currently only support Cisco devices for backing up the configurations, running our startup configurations using SNMP, right? And other devices are, vendors are not currently supported. And that comes to the end of the question and answer session. And I hope the session was very helpful in understanding the concepts of OpUtils product. And if you have any further questions, feel free to contact us by sending us an email at oputils-support@manageengine.com. We'll be glad to help you. Thank you, everyone. You all have a great day.